Hey everybody, it's Eli from Elfbait. Welcome back. So I wanted to jump on and do a video about in-character versus out-of-character conflict, and I certainly will be doing that. But before I start with that, I wanted to kind of jump in. I had a really great time this last weekend. We didn't have a chance to do our regularly scheduled game, RPG game, while one of our players was out, and I just really didn't want to run it without him. So we played a board game. Now, if you folks are not familiar with Flying Frog games, they do some really cool kind of lightweight, sort of RPG light board games, which usually involve, playing a character and then going around doing stuff. They have a game called Shadows of Brimstone. This is a game that my gaming group had kickstarted back when it came out. It's an amazing kind of Weird West sort of dungeon crawl, though it's more mines and stuff, with character development and a wide variety of characters and lots of monsters and stuff. If you haven't checked it out and you like dungeon crawl style games, and you're also a fan of Weird West or Wild West type stuff, check it out. It's an excellent game. Flying Frog Games, Shadows of Brimstone. I'll put a link in the description below. But that said, what is the point of today's episode of Elfbait? Wanted to talk about out of character versus in character, and the 5 things that I've kind of come up with that will help players and DMs mitigate some of the friction that might come up with in your group when it's not quite clear whether it's in character or out of character. So before I get into those points, gaming groups come in different shapes and sizes. If you're lucky, you've got a group that you've played with for a long time, you know them in and out, and most of these points I'm going to make here are probably not going to be all that useful for you because you can read them like a book and it's no big deal. But gaming is exploding right now, and so there's lots of groups that are all made of strangers or casual players, or you may have invited, the guy from work, or if you're like me and my current group, it's a mixed bag. I've got one player that I've played with a lot. One player is my wife, and so I certainly know her. I hope so, after 16 years of marriage. But I've got former coworkers, I've got coworkers, and so while I know most of them and I know a lot of them and they sort of know each other, they don't necessarily know each other as well as I might know my wife and my buddy from my regular gaming group. So it can be difficult to read people you don't know, and it's often easy to take in-character actions wrong and read them as out-of-character friction. And so, like a lot of my videos, they come from things that have happened with me and my gaming group, or questions that have been asked of me, or things I've seen on Facebook posts, or just blurbs that pop into my head. This one stems from some stuff that's been going on at my table. So, getting all of that out of the way and said, what are these 5 things? So number 1, the most important thing, I think, for all of this is just to agree that conflict equals story. Very rarely are you going to find a story where everybody gets along and there's zero conflict. Aragorn and Boromir have their conflict. Legolas and Gimli have their friendly rivalry. Tasselhoff Burrfoot was causing problems for the rest of the Dragonlance characters. It is not uncommon for there to be conflict. Robin Hood had conflict within his merry men. The Knights of the Round Table had conflict. Conan has conflict with his various sidekicks du jour. Darkwing Duck has conflicts with Launchpad McQuack. It really comes down to conflict is good for story. And if you can accept that, then you're already, in my opinion, at least 50% of the way at dealing with your problems with misinterpreting out of character stuff, OOC stuff with IC stuff. So number 2, it's very important to communicate the intent of your character's action. It is one thing to simply say, I hit the orc in the face, or I stab the merchant, or I throw an insult at the Lord of the Realm. Problem is, that's fine. Usually when you're dealing with NPCs, the DM expects the players to be antagonistic. It's not a problem. But when you're dealing with other players, you want to make sure that your intent is clear. This helps to assuage any concerns as to whether or not the player is taking issue with the other player. It is very simple to say, okay, my thief does not like the way that the paladin is talking to me, thusly I'm going to go ahead and, insult him. Or my ranger, doesn't like the way that the thief is cozying up to that witch, I'm going to get between the two of them. And you can state your intent very simply and it just comes down to stating why. You're not spilling the beans and you're not tipping your hand or anything like that. You're telling a story. This helps to inform the rest of the players what the thought process for your character is, so it doesn't just seem like you're blurting out an action and being disruptive or adversarial or even distracting or just out of character, creating conflict. So state your intent, make it clear why your character is doing what he is. So number 3 was going to be make it clear that it is your character doing something. This kind of goes hand in hand with stating your intent. And often it's going to be as simple as my ranger does this, my paladin does this. You might use it, you might speak in the third person, or speak familiar with your character. Valadril doesn't like the way that barkeep is eyeing him, and he storms over to the bar. Or Valadril doesn't like the way the dwarf from the party keeps insulting his heritage, and so he's going to take umbrage and go over and talk to him. Or, my ranger doesn't think that the thief is trustworthy and is not going to let him anywhere near the treasure. So you're stating your intent, and then you're also making it clear that it's your character that's doing the act, instead of just, I don't want you to have that sword. Or no, there's no way you're going to get that sword. I mean, you can do that. There's no way you're going to get that sword. My paladin is going to go over and make sure that you can't get near it. Okay. So 4 would be to be sure to allow other players to interact with your action. It's really easy to have a set action in mind and want to initiate that action against another player especially. But also against NPCs in the world around you. But be prepared for other players to want to interact. Now, this could be in opposition of your action, and that's where most of the conflict is going to come up between IC and OC. But it also could be that they're in support of your action. In the example before, when the ranger wants to get between the thief and the witch, it could be that the barbarian is also superstitious of those witch and wants to go ahead and support the ranger. It could be, however, that the barbarian is, maybe this witch is some wise woman that his culture respects, and he's not about to insult her, and he's going to back the play of the thief. Either way, those characters are going to be modifying the actions of the ranger, either in opposition of him or in support of him. So you gotta be willing and open to allowing for other players to interact. Now, you want to be polite here, and you certainly want to let the first player, the initiating player, state their intent and state their action. And then if you have some sort of way, if you feel your character is going to modify that action or take some sort of reaction to it, then go ahead and state so after they've had a chance to do so. Again, make sure that your intent is clear and make sure that it is actually your character that is doing it, and that the party and the players know that. It can be really easy to get caught up in the moment and blurt something out. That is okay. It's okay to get excited. You want to get into the moment, but make sure that if you do that, follow up with a statement like, if it was, for example, oh, the barbarian's not going to let the ranger do that. Or, no, I get in the ranger's way. My barbarian feels that, this is a holy woman, and he's not going to actually, he wouldn't, his tribe doesn't allow this kind of insult. Something that, if you're going to modify the action, make sure you follow the other rules. So that's number 4. And this isn't a long list. because of course it's only 5 points and they're pretty simple, but they can go a long way to actually working through these conflicts between in character and out of character. So number 5 is be prepared to be thwarted. Just because you have a great idea, just because you think that you may have thought this out. I'm going to do this, and then my character's going to do this, and this is going to spark this reaction, and next thing you know, there's going to be a fight, and then I'm going to get a chance to do this, or I'm going to show that paladin just how trustworthy I am, or I'm going to back that thief, and he's going to owe me, and blah, blah, blah. Just because you have this chain of events all figured out in your head doesn't mean they're going to play out that way. And being willing to accept the fact that no matter how cool your action is, it is up to debate whether or not it's going to go through, and that whether or not the other party members are going to let it happen. That's going to help you feel okay when it doesn't. Again, conflict is where a lot of the story comes from. Inter-party conflict can create some great texture to your role-playing. So that's the 5 steps, or the 5 things you can do. So as a player, that's where it's going to be hardest to implement these. The DM, your GM, is always mediating. It's not hard for the GM to mediate the table, and it is often going to be a case where the DM has to step in and say, okay, you want to do that? Tell me how you're doing it. How are you going to go about doing it? Can you give me a little bit more detail? As a GM, that's how you can help your players to ease into these skills. Is just to sort of prompt them when you feel like they are leaving their actions a little vague. Because not only does this help assuage conflict, help smooth things out, but it also adds to the narrative. It makes the story more rich and full, and so players aren't just hitting it with their sword, and players aren't just stealing the ring. They're actually showing some sort of narrative flow that builds that story, and it builds that character and who that character is. And as time goes by, when you're doing those actions later on, it also becomes easier for the other players to remember previous interactions with your character and kind of just insert that intent anyways. And then you don't have to necessarily observe all of these rules all the time. Now, as a player, it's a little trickier for you to do this. As I mentioned before, you can be really caught up in the moment, and so you may have something that you're going to want to blurt out, and you have your actions. Just remember that you're all there at the table for the same reason. You're trying to go on an adventure. You're trying to tell a collaborative story. You're really working together to have this fun moment where you're just out there doing the adventure thing and having a good time. You've probably all watched movies, read comic books, regular books, seen plays, dealt with in real life where the drama can make things more interesting. And so allowing your players to do that, allowing each other as players to do that, and being willing to accept that this is just all character action, it's all in character, it's not out of character, will really help you flow through and get over kind of some of those bumps. Because I can tell you, nothing sucks more than being at a table and not knowing whether or not another player is actually mad at you, or if his character is mad at your character, or is that guy at the table just really is he a bully, or is his character a bully? Some of your players aren't going to be as loud. Some of your players are going to be a little quieter, so you want to allow for that. But if you can keep these in mind, you're really going to be helping yourselves, you can be helping your game, and it'll actually be better. So I want to go over those one last time. So we had number 1, agree that conflict is story. Number 2, communicate your character's intent. 3, make it clear that it is your character acting and not you. 4, be sure to allow other players and other characters to interact with your action. And number 5, be willing to accept that you may be thwarted, that success is not guaranteed. If you can master all of those, I feel that you're going to find that your interaction between the players and the characters and the players are going to benefit greatly from that. So, all of that said, are you guys doing something like this in your game? How do you handle conflicts between in character and out of character? Do you have any strategies that have worked for you? Certainly like, share, and got ahead of myself. put your comments below, and certainly let me know how you go about doing that. If you've not had anything like this come up, and you certainly have a chance to try, and you try these out, and you have a result, come back and let me know. Put your comment down below. And now we can get to that like, share, and subscribe. Certainly get the channel out there. It helps me grow, helps me get out there. I am not doing the Patreon thing. I'm not doing any sponsors or anything yet. This is just me in my garage having fun and helping folks out there be better gamers or have, maximize their game time. You can find me on Facebook. We got an Elfbait Facebook group that was not wanting to come out there. There is also Elfbait on Twitter. That is me. And I have a brand new Elfbait only dedicated Elfbait email address, and that is baittheelf@gmail.com. Elfbait emails were all taken, and Bait the Elf is cool anyway, so baittheelf@gmail.com. You can send me suggestions for videos, questions, comments, like they like to say over at Nerdarchy, the GM 911s, that's there, so I won't steal it. You can call me the Help Me Eli, my game is in trouble, whatever you want to call it. I love emails. I've always got my mobile with me, so if I don't I'll probably get back to you pretty quick if it requires an immediate answer. If you would like to see me air it, specifically would like to see me put it into a video, then please state that so I can do so. But all of that said, whether you're using these 5 rules or not, or 5 suggestions or not, whether you're playing Shadows of Brimstone from Flying Frog Games or not, whether you think I am a kook in a nut who should get off the internet, doesn't matter, because what's really important is that you get out and game. Take care, guys.